We're in the heart of summer. Happy 4th of July to all of our U.S. listeners and to those outside of the U.S., pretty mild week of boxing, to say the least. We will start the show, obviously, with my co-host Dakota. And we're going to talk about Jack Catterall versus Harlem Eubank, which really, I don't think we're going to go very long on it. So I'm going to give it to Dakota.
Yeah, fight was a little bit of a tough hang. Eubank had a very herky-jerky style. Seemed like it was tough for him to settle into anything, and Catterall found, some spots here and there to kind of land a handful of the only clean shots of the entire fight. But there was a lot of tackling and rolling around, and just an odd fight from the Eubank side. In terms of, seeing Catterall, he still has the skills that we knew he had, but I would have liked to have seen him be in a fight where he didn't have to have a cut that covered his entire eyebrow. But nonetheless, one more in the victory column for him.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that is a tad bit concerning is there was a clear level gap for me, and I think the herky-jerky style played a factor in this. But I really wanted to see Catterall kind of show his class over Eubank. Like they were hanging a little too close, or there was a little bit, I don't want to say lackadaisical, but the punch output. And there was a lot of just kind of inactivity or useless stuff going on in this fight that also made it a rough hang. It's not the funnest fight I've ever seen. And honestly, when I saw it on paper, it didn't really make sense to me other than it probably gets both of them paid. It was a fight that came and went. And sadly, Catterall might have damage from this fight that could be a storyline moving into other fights.
Yeah, I mean, they both had really gnarly cuts by the end of that. I mean, both of those would probably need a plastic surgeon of some kind. Those weren't just like your regular stitch 'em ups.
Yeah, it wasn't a fight that really drew my attention. It wasn't something I was waiting on. And honestly, the fight played out about as interested as I was in that fight.
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately, Catterall won every round, I thought. Pretty clear. He landed the only clean shots of the fight for the most part. And I think, he moves on, at least, and whenever he's healthy to do so. I still think that he's a interesting addition to the new welterweight division.
Just don't love his punch output. I think there's at times where like he's a little too comfortable just doing his thing and fighting at his speed. And Barbosa kind of won that fight by pushing a pace that he just didn't want to fight at. By the way, a lot of viewers jumping in. Thank you guys. Thank you gals for jumping in. Tons of people already jumping into the chat. Great to see you. That's about as much as I wanted to talk about that fight, to be honest with you. Undercard, William Crolla lost. That was, I mean, I hadn't been heavily invested in his career, but that was a surprise, famous last name. Sky Nicholson gets a win on the undercard. Joe Cordina gets a win. I think the big thing to me was there was also a rebrand of Matchroom in the lead up to this fight. So a new logo, simultaneous weigh-ins at the show. It looked like they're kind of trying new things out. And honestly, this kind of felt like who's going to kind of make it to this next era of Matchroom. It was some of the old guard kind of having, stay busy summer fights, maybe to lead into an interesting fall fight.
What do you think is the reasoning for the rebrand? I don't know too much about it other than the visual of yesterday was different.
I think it's just a corporate thing. I think that's like, when you bring in like a think tank or something, they're like, why don't you? I mean, it always feels like big companies every 7 to 8 years kind of change it up if for nothing else to change it up, except for legacy brands. Like legacy brands like Coca-Cola never really seem to change it up. They might change a campaign, but they keep the logos. I think it's just to differentiate, to reinvent. I think that Jake Paul, when we get into this week, shout out my guy G Funky, he said big dog. I think that like when you look at this youth wave of kind of influencers and people that can use social media, do you think about back 10 years ago, Eddie was the new kid on the block, the person that used social media. Now I believe he's in his mid-40s now. So it's like maybe part of it is just creating a brand that reflects maybe where they are as a company in Eddie's tenure with this. Something that's more that I'm just speculating, but I think
Yeah, yeah,
it
I feel
might be
that.
like a more mature sense. It might be like moving towards the future. It also might be just something to kind of just bring eyes to the product, just by doing new things brings more eyes saying, "Oh, that looks different."
Sure, why not? I do listen, bro. I'm never opposed to trying some new shit out in this game.
Anything from the undercard stand out to you?
I thought the Sky Nicholson fight was really impressive. I have a hard time figuring out what to make of Joe Cordina because there's these long stretches where I'm like certain I'm watching a world-class guy, and then he just gets hit so clean by guys that he's clearly at another level from. And I remember that used to happen with Zordo fights, right? Where you'd be watching a Zordo fight and he'd be dominating, and all of a sudden you get like clipped really good and get hurt. And then he'd win a 10-2 decision, but you'd be like, you remember when he almost got knocked out? And I feel like with Cordina, there's been a handful of times where I've watched him where he's just like clearly has the ability, and then out of nowhere he's just going life and death. And so I can't figure out how to assess where he sits.
It's a weird figure. I think that he's obviously a world-class fighter and he should be in world-class fights. The question is he the world-class fighter that's going to be a test for the up-and-comers, or is he going to be a guy that stays in the title picture? I don't know which of the two he is.
I just think he's too hittable in those moments. I think that the best in what is he still at 130, or did he move up to 135?
Pretty sure he's 35 now, but do you want me
Yeah,
to do
I just think
fact check?
when I think about any of the top punchers at 30 or 35, if he gets caught with what Gonzalez was catching him with, and he's going to be in with more tactical type guys, like I see all the good things that you see, Lukey. I see somebody that's too vulnerable to win at the top level.
Fact checked. It was at 35. I mean, you think about if he's in with Abdullah Mason, Keyshawn Davis, some of these heavy hitters, even like Shakur Stevenson, who is rumored to fight
William
a while
Zepeda.
ago.
William Zepeda.
Zepeda. I mean, really, any of the heavy hitters. This would be a great fight for Floyd Schofield, coming off a Tevin win. If he could get a guy like Joe Cordina, I mean, if Schofield hits you in the first couple of rounds, he's going to buzz you.
I just see the tools and the ability to do a variety of different things. And so he does have a lot of different things he can go to, but there's weird moments where I just feel like a top guy is just going to stop him. It's just what it is.
Okay, let's jump into the news and notes of the week. Are you ready for the news and notes?
Always, Bob.
Two big things. Artur Beterbiev posted a cryptic Instagram post, which is now kind of like the news. And he basically said that like there's a chance that him and Dmitry Bivol might not fight at the end of the year. There's talks of the fight being moved back. This is on the heels of Mike Coppinger of Ring Magazine saying that there's been a blessing from Turki Al-Sheikh for the fight to take place in Russia. Basically, a lot of we're not sure if that fight's happening in 2025. And the first fight happened in February, and the original bout was in October. So it's basically just going to stall the light heavyweight division potentially. I'm not sure what to make of this. Beterbiev, for what I know, has always been a reliable narrator, and Bivol has taken on the best challenges available. So I don't think that it's anything like him being avoidant, because he fought Zordo, Canelo, and Beterbiev twice. It's just an odd development in basically a fight that I've been waiting to hear get announced for some time now.
Yeah, I would have to think that, the dynamics, not that this is the part that I'm particularly interested, but the dynamics of how you work out the resources now with Bivol being the champion, having won the rematch having been relatively clear that he won. There's probably some reconfiguration going on. And all we can hope is that that's a fight that we get an announcement on sooner than later, because not only does it move the light heavyweight division forward, it moves all of boxing forward, because you're talking about two top 10 pound for pound guys that are trying to work out a generational rivalry at this point.
So the business stuff, I personally avoid. Who even knows if this is fact? It could be just frustrations being aired. But the thing that I think I'm most interested in is what does this do to the light heavyweight division when all the belts are tied up? Um, what do the key players, where do they go? What are the meaningful fights young fighters can take? Where can Khalil Ko go? Where can David Benavidez go?
Well, we know
Where
David
can Najee
Benavidez is
go?
going to go to Anthony Yarde, right? Which is not a terrible fight. It's not the fight I'd necessarily like to see him in, but that is at least a world-class operator that's been in with some guys that he's going to at least be able to put that feather in his cap and go, okay, since I've moved up here, I've beaten Vosdick, I've beaten Morrell, I've beaten Anthony Yarde. I'm checking all the boxes to get the winner of a Beterbiev-Bivol without any questions asked.
Guess here's my frustration, right? And maybe I just think about this like a boxing writer too much, or like a purist or a historian, and maybe I'm wrong. It's a little frustrating, Dakota, when you've got Dmitry Bivol in his prime, big win over Beterbiev, might not return. How do you give him fighter of the year? And then you got Benavidez with a good win over Morrell and a win over Anthony Yarde. Look, I'm as high on Anthony Yarde as many people.
It's a good fight, but like I said, it's not the one we want. But he is getting in with like a top 7 guy, as opposed to waiting and not being active the way so many fighters are. So you know what I'm saying? Like that's the alternative in his situation.
I'm just saying, let's say Crawford beats Canelo, or let's say Nakatani beats another top contender. Those are going to be the guys that are in the running for fighter of the year, and I think more fighters need to value the fighter of the year argument because of that. We have our guest. We got Chicken Metcalf on. Chicken, how you doing?
Hey,
Oh, what up, Cap?
how y'all
Okay.
doing?
Okay, we don't know how much time you got, so we'll just jump right in. This is my co-host, Dakota. Dakota has never interviewed you. IBF Bantamweight Women's World Champion. She will be fighting this Friday on Netflix. Dakota, why don't you take on the lead duty for this interview?
Well, wow, you totally ambushing me with those duties. But listen, how you doing, Champ? Thank you so much for coming on today. A classic fighter car interview. I would say the majority of my fighter interviews are in and around the vehicle.
I know. Look, we be moving. I'm moving around. I'm gonna go cold plunge in a minute.
No, I know, and that's why we appreciate your time, Champ. How's camp been?
Hey, it's been great. I'm super excited about this camp. I've been able to like really train hard and had a good amount of time. You know, you guys, for my world title shot and other fights, I pretty much getting ready in like 5 weeks and stuff like that. So this camp been really great.
Let me add to this. I want to ask a question, Chicken. You've said this to me, and we did an article, but I want you to talk about the underdog mentality you carry into fights, because for those that are unaware, the way your career started, you started out taking tough fights. You didn't have that perfect protected record. Tell me about how you feel about Cherneka Johnson having her name in front of your name and entering this fight with something to prove.
I mean, I really didn't like it at all because I felt like I was signed first, and I feel like she was my opponent, and I have more attributes than she does. But as what we talked about before, it's probably glad that I'm the underdog because that makes me train harder. It lets me know that I got a chip on my shoulder, so I need to go in and I need to prove them wrong every time while I am really her. I'm her, y'all.
What do you think this stage is going to be like for you, from the media workouts to the press conference? It feels like this is a historic moment that women's boxing is always going to look back upon. What do you think being a part of this card is going to mean for you and the history of women's boxing?
It's definitely going to mean a lot to me because I'm a pioneer of the sport. It's going to really elevate who I am as a boxer, especially when I win. Like, everybody's getting to know my story, so people are really grasping towards me and just getting able to know me even more. And so I'm just definitely going to take advantage of this whole situation. I'm going to perform the best of my ability, and I'm just happy for this.
Okay, I'm going to try to drag a story out of you. You came up, for those that are unaware, kind of fighting in the club scenes, but not club boxing scenes, kind of like Kimbo Slice type fights.
Yes.
You got any crazy stories about your early days in fighting, where you were fighting in like these, I don't want to say shady clubs, but you know,
in the club,
different environments? Do you have any unique stories that shaped you into the fighter that you are?
one of my fights was when I went to Miami and fought, and Floyd Mayweather was there, and it was so lit because he was picking me to win. So I was like, shoot, I gotta win now. Floyd Mayweather is here, and so I pretty much outboxed that girl, and he gave us money for win. Like, he was somebody who gave me a lot of money, and that was the highlight of my underground boxing career, to be watched by Floyd Mayweather, and then on top of that, he shake my hand and give us money.
What's the mentality of being an underground boxer compared to a pro boxer? Because I think that it shapes the toughness of a fighter being an underground boxer. I feel like you went in there kind of with an attitude of, I don't care what happens to me per se. Can you talk to that?
It's pretty much because we didn't know who we were fighting till that night. So it's not like you got to prepare for a certain opponent. You pretty much just have to be in shape to fight whoever. And I was fighting big girls. Like, you see some of my YouTube videos, I was fighting big girls, tall girls. Well, I think maybe one or two of them may have been taller than me, but they was all, mostly everybody was bigger than me. I was way smaller than what I am now. So it was pretty much like, hey, I know I'm finna get this money that they throw in this ring, so I'm finna whoop her ass.
Yeah, and so any of like being able to prepare for an actual opponent and have time and to be able to put that type of planning into it, that must be like a luxury compared to what you've been through before this.
Yes, it's different, a luxury to just prepare for what your opponent. This one, I didn't know who I'll fight. I don't know how much she was gonna weigh. I just knew that I wanted the money.
So let me ask you a question. When did you start putting strategy into your fights? Like, at what point in your career?
Pretty much in underground.
Oh, no.
Did we lose the champ?
We might have lost the champ.
That's always the risk of a car interview, Lukia. As you know, you and I know that better than anybody.
It's always the risk. It's always the risk. What? As
Here,
you can
here now?
back.
Yeah.
You're back.
Yeah, so I was learning like ring generalship during that time, you know, and then I started noticing like, hey, because I'm so.
Somebody's trying to get her attention.
Somebody's calling, probably a viewer. Probably someone's watching. They're like, don't give up the plan. Don't give up the game plan. But yeah, as you can tell, like, Metcalf is just one of these genuine people. And if anyone tunes into the show, it's hard not to support her, you know. I don't know if you've gotten that already, Dakota, but it's pretty hard to not be a fan with how genuine she is.
Listen, bro, not knowing who you're fighting and what size they're going to be. And I don't even know, was she wearing gloves back in those days, or were those bare knuckle type joints?
Well, I like talking about it because I think it really shapes the fighter that she is. And a lot of people don't understand the journey she went through. And I think if it was a male fighter's journey, not to get into that, but people would talk up this. And because it's like, you know, a veteran pioneer women's boxer, people don't talk about it because they just don't either care, know, or ask. And I think it really molded the toughness and the person that she is.
I think a lot of times people just don't know, bro. Honestly.
Well, she hasn't had the platforms. You know, this is a big opportunity for her, and people just aren't as familiar with her story. And there's women's boxing is growing, in big part to Clarissa Shields and Katie Taylor and all of them, Amanda Serrano. But it's still in its infancy. And then you look at the bantamweight division, right? One of my favorite fighters, Junto Nakatani. How popular is he? Right? How many people know his story? How many people know who trains him? How many people know what he's doing, you know? And that's one of the best fighters in the world in this same exact division for the men. So it might not even just be a gender thing. It might be the division weight class too.
It's all of those things, bro. It's definitely all of those things. But she's in with a real one, man. I mean, Cherneka's got the 2 wins over Nina. Those were nice wins, even though I remember the decision getting announced wrong and all that. It's definitely, she's in with a real one who's got some real skills, but it's a good 50-50 fight to add to a card that's kind of filled with them.
I think Chicken's got the edge here. I think people underestimate her ability and her toughness, and I think that people are going to be surprised because I think she's fought so long and fought on so many different stages that it's going to mean so much for her to be on this stage. I think she's going to shine in this performance. And I think people are very much underestimating her because they're just not familiar with her.
Yeah, and one of the only ways you'd be familiar, and this part of what I was going to ask her is, there's sort of like the fun storyline with her and Yoshida, where she beats Yoshida, and then Yoshida gets the call to fight Ebony Bridges, who was, I believe, was a titleist at the time. Goes in and completely dominates Bridges. I mean, she fucking won just about every round of that fight, and Bridges hasn't fought since. And now she's got her own world title. They come back, they do the rematch, and Chicken wins the second one. You know what I mean? After really getting overlooked, I would say unfairly in that situation.
Well, I think that I wish she was on, but well, technically she's on. She just isn't able to respond. I'll just remove her for the time being, and when she pops back up, we'll add her to the stage. But she can share her insight while we're waiting to see if she comes back. She might be busy going to her ice plunge. We are going to head over to, let's break down Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano for the time being. Let's see. What do you see happening in this third fight, Dakota?
I'll be honest. I think it's going to be similar to the first two. But I think that, at least in my view, I think that Amanda might have just a little bit more juice left in the tank in terms of her punching power, and in terms of her ability to go for, a really hard 10 rounds. I just trust in that a little more. And part of why I trust in that, Amanda's had a lot of hard fights, but earlier in her career, so many of her fights were so dominant. You know what I'm saying? That she wasn't taking the same kind of punishment because she was putting girls out real quick, or she was just winning every round. Whereas Katie has just been fighting killers her entire career and has had like 10 50-50 type fights where she really did take a lot of punishment. And this feels like Marquez Pacquiao 4 for me. The first, it could easily be 2-0 the other way. I thought Katie won the first one, and I thought Amanda won the second one by a point, and so I couldn't get terribly mad at the decision. It was a flip a coin type of fight, but I got to lean towards Amanda on this one. It just seems like it's kind of her moment, and the fact, I feel like you give her enough chances, she's going to figure it out.
So I want to give a big shout out to Mighty Brooke Saburian. She's in the chat. What up, Lukey? Can't wait for these fights. That's another women's boxer. The women's boxers jumping into the chat today. Thank you so much.
That.
Let's see. I saw some action there. Maybe she's coming back, or maybe not. Let's see. So my thoughts on this fight are, I think Katie's kind of got her number. I think Amanda's slowing down. I think they're both slowing down. I'd be surprised if they fought beyond this. Maybe the loser fights one more time to leave on a high note. Maybe the winner fights like a Holly Holm who just signed. But I don't know. I don't see this. I see this as the end of the era. I see this as probably, not to be a buzzkill, but like the worst of the fights, the most definitive. I think Katie's just going to outbox her. And I think it's going to be a celebration of the magic the rivalry produced.
I think that there's some truth to that, but my whole thing is, with Katie, and I know people don't like saying it because she's so beloved, but it's like she was getting away with a lot of headbutts that last fight, bro. And if there's a ref that's a little stronger about enforcing that kind of stuff, I personally think that Amanda's going to have more opportunities to create action in this one.
Mighty Brooke, I'm back 8-2 at Saboba. Mega made it happen. Okay, we're going to have to get you on Fight Week, Brooke. We're trying to do more Fight Week interviews, so we'll get Brooke on Fight Week. For me, I just think Katie Taylor's got the skill set that's difficult for Amanda. I think Amanda, she has power to hurt Katie, and it's going to come down to those first couple of rounds if she can churn the fight with a power shot. But I think that Katie has just kind of displayed that when she catches rhythm against Amanda, it can be very, very difficult for her to kind of be effective. I think in the second fight, that was Amanda's to win. And I had Katie winning those final rounds to take the decision. And it's like, yeah, I get the headbutts, but I just think that sometimes a certain fighter has an advantage over him. And I think Katie just has an ability with angles, speed, and distance where Amanda's a little bit more about the power and forcibly putting putting pressure on people, and Katie just is able to exploit maybe some of those deficiencies that she didn't have to work on earlier in her career.
I think you absolutely could be right. I also think a lot of people were saying that about Pacquiao over Marquez. So I don't think it's, when you have fights that are that close, you can never count out the loser, is kind of how I see it. But I could also see the flip side of that, where it could be a Canelo Triple G 3, and it is the worst of the 3, and the winner just takes it up that one more notch.
I think it's going to be great, though. I think it's going to be great for the sport. It's a great matchup because when you have people that are nerds that talk about boxing on Sunday mornings and Sunday afternoons, and they don't know what to expect, that tells you it's a good fight, right? We love the sport. We have a good vibe for the sport, and we're undecided on what's going to happen. So that means it's a good fight for those tuning in. It's going to be on Netflix. It's a good fight. I favor Katie Taylor. Dakota favors Amanda Serrano. It's a fight that I think if you're a boxing fan, you should totally watch. If you have Netflix, why wouldn't you for this fight? Let's run through the undercard. We got Alycia Baumgardner.
By the way, just real quick before we close that one out, Lukey, I know people are probably like, oh, Dakota's from New York. Of course, he's picking Amanda. I picked Katie the first 2 times, by the way. So it's not a bias thing. I've seen the 2 fights a couple of times, and if I'm looking at who I think has more juice, to me, it's Amanda. But I'm not going to be surprised if Katie wins because she's a great fighter.
Yeah, that's what it is. Alycia Baumgardner is back against Jennifer Miranda. It's her first fight with MVP, Most Valuable Promotions. Is there any chance that is there any chance we see slippage or any decline? Do you think she's going to come out there and make a huge statement? Do you think she stays at 130? What are your assessments of Alycia Baumgardner? Because it's really been a long, long time since she fought. She fought around Halloweenish last year, and it was one or 2 rounds against Delphine Persoon. The fight was stopped off of a cut. Just a lot of inactivity over the past few years, albeit, there's a mess outside of the ring we don't need to touch on. But what are you expecting on the return?
Unfortunately, Lukey, I think the mess outside the ring is a factor because it is the main source of the inactivity. And it's also, I would say, the main source of the decrease in interest in her and her career overall. Because I think, especially in boxing, there's enough times where fighters are getting popped and then they're gone for a little bit and then they can kind of just come back and it's all good and we're all supposed to forget it and pretend like it didn't happen. And I don't know how effective she's been in moving forward from that.
Well, I think a lot of people are looking at this fight as like a gimme an easy fight. And I think that Baumgardner has some real demons to exercise in the ring. She has ring rust. And you and me had been talking about it. I like Alycia, but there was a time after the Michaela Mayer fight where it felt like she was kind of doing the Hollywood tour. Like she was kind of like doing the Kendrick Lamar victory lap after, I forget what album he did. He was jumping off verses and kind of phoning them in, it felt like. And it did feel like she was there to kind of, something weird could happen at some point in her career. And then that's when the inactivity fit in. So she's either going to be a Hall of Fame boxer or we're going to see a decline. I don't think we're going to see a middle class with her in terms of where her career goes. And I'm interested. Now, I believe Derek James is working with her. Is that correct?
That I don't know, honestly.
Let me check this out, because if Derek James is working with her, to me, Derek is one of the best coaches in all of boxing. And if Derek's with her, that really helps, because I think that what makes Derek so special is, Derek's working with her. So let me talk and say what I think makes Derek special is he knows the fundamentals and he's a good coach, but I think he also understands people and he understands situations and anxieties and stuff. And I think he might be the perfect coach for Alycia Baumgardner at this point, because he's someone that's not just a boxing coach. He's going to be like, okay, what's going on right now? And I think there's a lot of times. So this is, how everybody kind of says we need more teachers in boxing, right? I think we need more coaches that care about the fighters, right? And Derek cares about his fighters. You could say whatever, mess or whatever, but he really cares. And I think that that's a huge advantage when you go into a
I
fight
think you
knowing
got to really care to tolerate Ryan Garcia, that last camp with Devin Haney.
well, I'm just saying, I know Derek cares. You know, I know he's not someone that's just going there. He's not just going there to go. You know, he's invested in the fighters and he knows the fighters. So I'm curious to see how this plays out because Baumgardner is someone who I think could be or is a women's boxing star. And when Taylor and Serrano step away, she's the next figure, kind of.
It's possible. It's possible, but inactivity, you know, like with Keith Thurman, like with so many other male fighters before her, you know, people forget, and it's not their job to stay invested in an inactive career. I think sometimes the fighters, because they're so in it, they lose track of what the public is actually thinking about. Like, it may not seem like a long time for Dmitry Bivol since the second fight, but if they wait 11 months, like, the interest just won't be as high. And just because it's the center of his universe doesn't mean it's the center of everyone's universe.
Now, our good friend Martin Mulligan, evening, Lukey and Dakota. Ellie Scotney is a great little fighter. Looking forward to seeing her. She's one of my favorite women's boxers.
Tremendous.
And she's taking on Yomith Mercado. I think she's going to be a standout on this card. I think if people watch this full card, I think people are going to be like, where did she come from? I think she's one of the best women's boxers. And I think and I hate to say it, because she doesn't do the sexy girl thing. She's more of a traditional fighter. I hate to say, like, it sounds bad to say this, but she's kind of just been based around her talents and her in-ring action. She hasn't been a great interview. I think she's been overlooked to a certain degree. Now, maybe I'm wrong for saying that. What do you think, Dakota?
I don't know if she's been overlooked. I mean, she's a world champion who's, you know, beaten like multiple unbeaten fighters and whatever, but I don't, but maybe she has been overlooked because she's definitely not getting the same attention that maybe a more famous fighter
She's not listed
would.
as a pound for pound women's fighter. And I think she's quite clearly at that level.
I agree. I'm all in on her. I also think it's tough. Like, this wouldn't matter to us as much, but I think the fact that she has not gotten a stoppage, it's just tough for some people to get as invested.
I get it, but I mean, talent is talent, and it's like I think you're going to struggle to see her losing rounds when you go back and watch her fights. Like, she is dominating. She beat Cherneka Johnson rather clearly, and Johnson went on to be a title holder after that, and people are not looking at that victory the same way. They're more like, oh, Johnson belt holder. They're not going, oh, that was perceived as a 50-50 fight.
Yeah.
Another fight, I wanted you to go on a Dakota monologue. Shadasia Green, Savannah Marshall. Let's go on a monologue here.
Man, my monologue on this fight is it's two separate monologues. The first monologue is I'm very excited that Shadasia, who I've spent a lot of time with in the gym over the last 2 years, is finally getting one of those fights that she's talked about as like her dream fight. And it was always this one in the Shields fight. And so, you know, we were talking about this 2 years ago when it wasn't anywhere near on the horizon, and this was a fight she always wanted. So I'm very happy for Shadasia to get that opportunity. Just purely as a boxing match, it's a 50-50 fight. Like, we were talking about this the other day, right? On paper, you know, Savannah has more experience at the top level and more winning experience at the top level, which I think experience always matters. But Shadasia's a tough ask for a fighter who hasn't been in a boxing ring in 2 years. And who's done MMA. And so I think that there's there's areas where each fighter has an advantage. And I just think it's a tremendous matchup, man. Like, these are the matchups right here. You know what I mean? And this card is filled with them, but to me, this one is one of, if not the best matchups of the night.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the question is, what Shadasia exists anymore? During her run, she looked unstoppable, albeit there were elements of being Rosh, but she looked like one of those Bivol Crawford of women's boxing, like one of those special figures. Franchon Cruz DAZN fight happens, and we've never seen that fighter. If anything, we've seen kind of a dip in performances, and we've seen what I'd say like almost like her living nightmares in the ring, where it feels like she's questioning what's happening. It kind of reminds me of Teofimo Lopez. He beats Lomachenko, and then after that fight, kind of questioning himself in the Sandor Martin fight, not having a great performance by Pedro Campa. That's kind of what I'm seeing. And Tio's righted the ship. But for me, you know, Savannah, we don't even know what she's like as a boxer anymore. She's out of sight, out of mind. She beat Savannah Marshall, and that feels like an eternity now. And we have Shadeja, who, quite frankly, at that same time was fighting. She doesn't feel like the same fighter either. So to me, this is literally a crossroads fight for two fighters who it's going to be tough for whoever loses this to be back at this big stage as in a good position, you know, because.
Well, the only way is that if they both, you know, if they really put on a classic and both have a great performance and it's a flip a coin. That's the way that they both walk out as winners. I actually think it has the potential to be a great fight like that in the same way that the fight with Savannah and Claressa was.
So my gut feeling is this fight's going to be one-sided, but I can't tell you who it's going to be for. So part of me thinks Shadeja is going to just show up and shock Savannah because she's been out of the ring so long. And part of me thinks Savannah could just start really fast and things could go downhill for Shadeja. I have to wait until fight week, kind of see the mentalities, and I could kind of probably tell you. But I just get the feeling one of them is just going to take over the fight. It's just, I don't know why I think it. On paper it says it's 50-50. My gut feeling is someone's going to set a tone and the other one's just not going to like it.
Yeah, fortunately, I think that Savannah has always been like a bigger, taller fighter for her weight generally. And so she's not as big on like the smother and be on top of you style, right? Like she likes to have a little length to get her shots off. I think that's been the thing that Shadeja struggled with the most, is if somebody wants to just rush her and make body contact and have no space. I think that's where she has a hard time and gets a little frustrated. I don't think that Savannah is going to fight in that style.
Okay, next one. Interesting fight. Chantelle Cameron takes on Jessica Camara. Are we a little concerned about Chantelle Cameron's career trajectory right now? She got a majority decision.
It's fucked up, bro. It's fucked up. She's a main event fighter without a doubt to me.
Well, that's one thing to touch on, but I mean, also beats Katie Taylor, tough fight, loses to Katie Taylor, goes to a different promoter. Her last fight, she has a majority decision with Elaine, a good fighter who fought Alycia Baumgardner, but then Layla Boudan, really good fighter, great interview. She stopped her, you know, and no disrespect to her. She worked on power and she was working on things. But to me, Chantelle Cameron's one of these special fighters, and to have a majority decision with, and there's two ways to look at it, right? You could say Elaine went into that fight, gave it her all, lost a bit of herself, and then was never the same after that fight. Or, you know, this is concerning for Cameron. I'm just presenting a opinion that, is there a chance that Cameron might be starting to decline and we look at her as the future, but she might be coming down after this exhausting beating Katie Taylor and all this run that she's been on? Is there a chance that now going in with Jessica Camara, who was neck and neck with Cali Reyes probably about 4 years ago, good workhorse fighter, kind of Orlando Salido like in her approach, is there a chance this is going to be like a more competitive fight than people are thinking?
I mean, Kamara's a very solid, strong contender. I personally think that Cameron will win the fight clean by stoppage or decision. I couldn't tell you, but to me, it's tough because I thought she beat Katie twice. And so I don't feel, in my mind, I don't see any reason to like be questioning, you know, where her spot in the sport is. I feel like it's a no-brainer that she's just one of the top fighters, one of the top 5 or 6 pound for pound women's fighters in the world. I feel like it's a no-brainer. And I don't understand why it's almost like she has to justify that. But I feel like she's earned that spot in the ring. It's not, I don't feel like it was handed to her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, to me, what I'm saying is I think
I
that
also haven't seen her since the second Taylor fight, by the way.
so that fight she had the majority decision. If you go back and watch highlights, it's a weird performance, right? And I start to wonder if the business of boxing, maybe the politics of boxing are wearing on her because the performance didn't look like that same level of the Taylor performance.
Just not as enthusiastic.
Just
I mean,
looks
that can happen.
looks like a heavy burden on her shoulders. Just looks like, when fighters enter the ring with a lot on their mind, they probably don't think we can see it, but if we're smart, we can kind of see it. And it seems like she's entering the ring. I feel like Clarissa Shields had an era of that where it felt like she was entering the ring with a lot on her mind around 2018, 2019, and you could kind of see it. It was around when Hannah Gabriel's dropped her. It felt like there was a lot weighing on her. And I feel like I see a little bit of that with Cameron, is that it just seems like a lot's on her mind.
Yeah, I it's unfortunate. I feel like there, after those two fights with Katie, she should have been fielding opportunities.
Now our guest for today, Sha Metcalf, is taking on Cherneka Johnson. What are your thoughts on this fight?
Like we were saying to her, man, I mean, I really do feel like it's a 50-50 fight. Cherneka's got some really good momentum in her direction. So does Shurretta. I think maybe inactivity is the one kind of downside for Shurretta, but outside of that, I think she's got the size, the length, the awkwardness to give Johnson a ton of problems. And I've seen people point out certain critiques in her style, but you don't just get handed 2 wins over Yoshida. That's a tough fighter who comes to win. And I don't know if she's getting the full credit for the quality of those wins.
Well, I'll defend her because she came on the program, and that's what we do if you jump on here. I believe she started her pro career 2-3, and I think there was a perception that she was never going to be a championship level fighter. She blue collared it. She created a world title career. She fought for herself. She advocated for herself. She beat fighters like Melissa Odessa Parker, who's a very, very good fighter. And she really is never getting, not to sound corny, but she's never getting respect for her wins. It's like she beats someone, oh yeah, but. And it's like she has 2 wins over Yoshida. She beat Melissa Odessa Parker. She started her career off with an upside down record, turned it into a title career, and now she's with MVP fighting on this big stage against Cherneka Johnson. But now most people are favoring Johnson because they've seen her fights. Quite simply, Metcalf's fights haven't been as easy to watch.
And she's been more active. She has been more active. I think that is a big thing. And she was competitive in the Scotney fight, right? I mean, that wasn't a complete domination. So she's a proven fighter too. I'm not going to sit here and pretend, like she hasn't earned her spot.
No, she's a real fighter. She's a real fighter. Let's move over to the other fight this week in New York. It's probably like maybe the biggest New York fight card in some time. 2 big New York cards this week. We got Edgar Berlanga versus Khamzat Sheeraz. Dakota, what are your thoughts on this fight? I think we're differing.
Nah, yeah, which I love, bro. I think this is one that we view them a little bit differently. I personally think that Hamza is going to win this fight, and I think he's going to win it pretty clean. I think being a guy that's 6'3", 6'4", making middleweight, you just start to lose some of the zip. You start to lose some of the enthusiasm. You start to lose some of the sharpness. And I think you saw that play out when he fought Adames, who's also a competent, champion in his own right. And so to me, when I think about the best version of him that I've seen, that was a lot more recently than the best version that I've seen of Berlanga. Although maybe the best version of Berlanga was against Canelo. But Edgar had a fantastic start to his career, and there's just been a lot of flat performances since then. Nothing that would indicate to me that he's on that level to beat a guy like Hamza. So I see it as a clear win for Sheeraz, even though, of course, as a New York guy, there's a part of me that's rooting for Edgar. I just think, he's not creative enough with his offense to get off against a guy that tall, that big, that skilled, that mobile. I just think it's Hamza's fight.
So this is what I'm seeing, bro. Sheeraz is going to had some trouble with Carlos Adami's physicality, would you say? The physicality of Adami's?
I think it was the physicality, but I also think like he didn't put the output out. For whatever reason that is, I personally think it's weight because he's moving up immediately after that performance, and the kid's got the frame to be a cruiserweight. Like he's basically built like Zordo. And so, I just think this is going to be more natural to him.
Salute Lukey and Dakota, said Shoeshine Boxing. Will agree with you, Dakota. Sheeraz is better and has a point to prove after Adami's fight. For me, I just think Edgar is a very strong super middleweight. I think people underestimate how physically strong he is. And I wouldn't say he's like not skilled, but like strength is a power and physicality, and he's mean and he's willing to punch off the break.
He just don't let his hands go, bro. He just don't let his hands go. He hasn't let his hands go in 5 years.
Well, I mean, I think that boxing is a lot about momentum, right? So I think with Berlanga, he started out 16 first-round knockouts, has a fight with Damon Nicholson, never looked like the same guy. People go, well, he started fighting real guys. No, he fought real guys during that run. I think it's the momentum. People underestimate momentum in boxing. So,
but it's different fighting Eric Moon than fighting Steve Rolls. Like there is levels of
this resume. Like this is what people always do with Edgar. It's like Top Rank was trying to find guys that could go rounds with him. They're not giving.
I'm not saying.
But this is what everyone does with Berlanga. They're like, oh man, the minute he fought a competent guy, like Ulysses Sierra spent a bunch of time in Andre Ward training camps, but then it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna bring him in to go one round. Like there was something about Berlanga early on. Like Eric Moon was a solid guy. Cesar Nunez, solid guy.
Right, but that is different than fighting Jason Quigley or Steve Rolls. It's just different levels.
But that's so basically the thing. Lionel Bellows, another solid guy. He did the Abdullah Mason thing. So he went from the way he was supposed to get his rounds on undercards, and he's knocking guys out and getting these highlight finishes to the point where he's moving up the card. Pandemic hits, he's getting first round knockouts, so he can just keep coming back and back and back because he's just getting a cup of coffee like me right here, cup of coffee. And he gets a cup of coffee, goes in there. Perfect storm. Him, Xander's having quick finishes, Muratalla, they could keep fighting, so they fight. So he went from developmental fights where you're hoping the guy gets 40 to 50 to 60 rounds in, and he's only gone 16 rounds, but really 16 half rounds because he's not even going past the first round. So then you have to jump him up with guys who had like 130 rounds, and he's having to learn how he would have learned in the second or third fight on television. And now people are like, oh, he just doesn't simply have it. And I think that the thing about him is with Mark Farrat, when he got back with Coach Mark knows how to work with him. And I've seen a big improvement with Berlanga since he went back with Mark. And Berlanga's never going to be some wizard where you're going to appreciate the sweet science. He's a kid that is definitely of the social media era, and they'll definitely be for older people. You're definitely going to feel the social media-ness of Berlanga at times, but he hits very hard, and he's going to land on parts of Sheeraz's body. That's the big thing. It's not, I know people always say you got to land to have power. He might not land clean, but he's going to land on arms. He's going to land on hips. He might land low. He might punch him in the back of the head. And what I saw with Sheeraz in that fight with the Damis was there is a level of temperament that he does not enjoy that. And I think that people are looking at Berlanga as if I'm going to be honest, a fighter that was developed, and that there's not as much of a real guy component to him, as it was more like it was a rubric of matchmaking. I think he's one of the hardest hitters. Sheeraz is moving up to fight one of the hardest hitters, and I think this is going to be a tough fight for him. Andy Lee is a great coach. I believe Andy Lee's working with Sheeraz, but Sheeraz kind of has that same thing, right? As you were talking about with Zordo and Joe Cordina. What happens when he gets hit with the right hand? It's not an if. He's going to get hit with Berlanga's right hand. We saw him get hit with Ammo's straight.
I don't know that it's a given, though, to be honest. I got to be honest, Lukey, because I just don't. I've seen Edgar live multiple times now, And Edgar's biggest problem, his number one problem, bro, is initiating offense. It's like watching George Kambosos. I mean, he just does a lot of standing around and waiting. And his own crowd gets mad at him for it. And it gets real fucking quiet in there when Edgar fights, bro. It just does. And I don't think this is the guy to have one of those nights on against.
I think Martin Mulligan, I think Adami's controlled the fight, the Sheeraz fight, with his shoulder and front foot. Do you think Berlanga can do the same? No, I think it's going to be the power of his shots. So I think he's going to punch with Sheeraz at a certain point. While waiting for Berlanga to land, Sheeraz will be winning the rounds. I think that he's definitely going to be in a hole at some point, but I think this is going to be a fight where Sheeraz...
He's got to do it early, though, Lukey, because he was up like 8-0 on Jason Quigley with 4 knockdowns and then loses the last 4 rounds of the fight. So we know he's going to crap out around 7 or 8. And that's going to be Hamzah. If he's down, that's going to be Hamzah's opportunity. But if Edgar's going to make something happen, he's got to do it early.
I just feel like I'm either seeing this fight really, really right or really, really wrong, because I feel like the physical elements of this fight, the physical body component, people are overlooking how hard Berlanga hits. And I feel like people are not understanding, like, when you move up a weight class and you're in with a guy who hits really hard, sometimes your body just doesn't work the same when they're landing on elbows and arms.
I think he hits hard as shit, bro. He just doesn't let his punches go. And I've been there in person on multiple occasions where he's been in with lesser opponents and he still didn't let his hands go. And I just don't, I haven't seen him evolve past that step. Like, okay, it's very obvious you have all the ability. It's very obvious you have the power, you have the hand speed, you got a beautiful jab that you don't fucking use. You know, he's got all the tools in the world. He just doesn't let his hands go. And if that guy that I've seen in person multiple times shows up, he ain't winning this fight, bro. I'm telling you.
Well, next week's show is going to be fun because one of us is going to be really wrong, and that's kind of fun.
Then we're both right.
Next fight, Shakur Stevenson, William Zepeda. I have another strong opinion. I think this is going to be the Diego Chico Corrales fight of Floyd Mayweather's career. I think Shakur is going to stop Zepeda, and this is going to be target practice, and it's going to reinvent Shakur Stevenson's career. I think that Zepeda might be a fighter that's going on the downswing. His body might be breaking down, possibly from training really, really hard. And I think this is going to just be a perfect stylistic matchup for Shakur at this point in his career. I think he stops him. I think this is going to be like a 9th, 10th round TKO. And I think this is going to be one of Stevenson's best performances of his career.
I don't think that he stops him, but I think I see the same fight that you see minus the stoppage. I think I see him winning basically every round and getting, you know, a dominant decision. This is his moment to really make the first big statement that he's made since the Valdez fight. And I think that, you know, barring hand injuries, which seems like that's always in the mix for Shakur in the last couple of years, you know, he's got exactly the style to give Zepeda a ton of problems. That being said, I think Zepeda is going to hit him with output that he's never really been in with, and it's going to force him into action quickly. He's not going to be able
I think that's why the fight's going to turn the way it is I think Shakur is going to have to punch with him. And when he starts landing, he's going to have success. And I think that we're going to hear on the broadcast, this is the Shakur Stevenson we have always wanted to see. When Shakur Stevenson puts his punches together, he is unlike any other fighter in the sport of boxing today. Yeah. Look at this.
I think the flip side of that, though, is if he hurts his hand and goes into more of a defensive shell the way he did. It wasn't the De Los Santos fight, but it was the fight after that where, again, he did a lot of fucking waiting on that one, too. You know, that guy is not going to have enough of an output to keep Zepeda off of him. So I think that's where it potentially gets interesting. But if we're just talking skills, I think it's Shakur easy.
Yeah. Now is our favorite fight to talk about. It's Albert Puello Island. You know, I'm sitting on Albert Puello Island. I love an Albert Puello Island. I've got Albert Puello winning a split decision over Subriel Matisse. You know I do. Maybe a majority decision. He's going to win that 54-48 type decision. Barely get it. Puello might be the best guy in the division. I think he's going to do it once again in a very uninspiring, methodical, Carlos Molina-like way. But it still doesn't mean that he's not a great fighter. Dakota, what are you seeing?
He's a tremendous fighter. I don't think I've ever seen him what I felt like seeing him win a fight. Right? So he lost the last one to Gary Russell. There's no harm, no foul on that one. That was a tremendous performance from Russell. Right? Or no, I'm getting that wrong. Who did he lose to? Russell beat Ryo.
He has a win over Gary Russell Jr. And that one I thought was pretty clear. It's a majority decision. He
I was mixing up.
Akhmadaliev and Sandor Martin are probably the wins that you think, because those were kind of perceived as it could have gone either way.
Yep, I mixed him up with somebody else. I don't think he won the Sandor Martin fight, and I don't think he won the Akhmadov fight. And those are the two times I've seen him. Now, he still had good performances against really good fighters on that, so I'm definitely not discounting him. I just think my sample size on watching Matias is a little bigger, and I don't see Puello as like the defensive master that it would take to beat Matias.
Yeah, I mean, I think Puello's a different level guy. I also think that he's a guy that, for whatever reason, he's kind of like the Sandor Martin of this division, except Sandor never gets the decisions. Puello gets the decisions in very close fights, and I feel like he gets kind of a bad reputation by hardcore fight fans because it seems like he gets the benefit of the doubt of close fights. But I think he's gonna shock some people, because this is a guy who, he can control. It's an interesting fight, right? When you think about it spiritually and psychologically, it's really a fight about pace and who can. I like how you had to look away for a second. You're like, what are you doing? But it's about, like, if Puello can make this fight kind of like a controlled sprint where he gets to walk around, get some punches off, do that. Matisse wants to turn this into a 100-yard dash every round, where it's just, you have to be in survival. You have to move. I'm coming
except
forward.
The first round.
Except the first round. But Matisse is someone that's like, he's a wall with nails. He wants that nail. Like, it might not be effective at first, but he knows if he gets you pinned against the corner, the wall with nails is coming. I think that the thing about this fight that's most interesting to me is who can control the rhythm, the speed, and the tempo of the fight. Unlike maybe any other fight on this card, this fight is going to be whoever dictates the rhythm. And my gut feeling is no one is. It's going to be another close fight.
I think it's going to be close. I definitely am not going to be surprised if Puello wins, by the way. I think that anytime, even if he lost both of those decisions, he's consistently fought close with, the top of the division for the last couple of years. So there's no shockers on this one.
Yeah, it's no shockers. Finally, opening the card, David Morrell, Iman Kitov. Really good fight. Interesting fight for Morrell. Kitov was my favorite 2020 Olympian. He was knocking everybody out. He hasn't been a great pro so far by my definition. He had a close fight with someone that I would say is a developmental level talent, but he's a very big puncher. And this is the type of fight where if there's any ramifications or after effects from a Benavidez fight, this is the type of fight where you start to see if Morrell's confidence is the same, if there's any lingering effects, because Kitov is a really big puncher, and I thought coming out of the Olympics he was Artur Beterbiev 2.0, and I wouldn't even be shocked if he flips the switch and turns into that for this fight as he's gathering the experience. I see this as a very competitive fight too. I've seen a lot of expert opinions. Oh, Morrell's going to come back. Kitov doesn't look great. To me, I see Kitov as a very serious operator. Tough fight, and I think it's a tough comeback fight for Morrell, to be honest.
I haven't seen this guy, but you got to give it to Morrell for, coming off his first loss and taking on another high level Olympian, undefeated, a lot of knockouts. I didn't expect Morrell to take a softie coming back, but he took a tough fight.
He's a real guy. He's a real guy, and he's taking real fights. And I'm telling you, man, these are real good fights on this card. Now, finally, the card I'm going to be at this weekend is the ProBox TV card. So if you see me out in Fresno, say hi to me. Be real great. I like that. On this card, we got Lester Martinez versus your guy, Pierre Dibobe. Probably said that perfect. He's had some close fights with many different fighters, including Ali Akhmadov recently. Lester Martinez, speaking of prospects / contenders, might be prospect of the year, and we might just be overlooking it. Taking on a lot of guys people avoid and pretty much actively pursuing fighters that no one wants to fight, if you ask me.
Yeah, and especially, with all the delays on that Joe Sean fight, it was tough to tell where he was, and then having that type of a dominant performance, I mean, it spoke volumes, bro. I'm definitely excited to see him back in.
And then in that co-feature, we got my guy Vladimir Hernandez taking on Francisco
Love some
Veron.
Vladimir Hernandez, bro.
That's a banger. I mean, think about what ProBox TV has done for a fighter like Vladimir Hernandez. At one point, looked at as like a journeyman pro. Now he's getting treated with dignity and respect, being able to have a fight of the year, knockout of the year. Really, a platform like ProBox TV really gives Vladimir Hernandez, a fan-friendly fighter, just such an opportunity. And matching him tough in this fight, I think he's got a chance with multiple losses to be a title holder, to be honest with you.
I do too. I really do. I think that, on any given night, especially at middleweight, he's a live dog, bro. Like, he's shown it over and over again.
Erick Badillo will take on Gerardo Zapata. It's a junior flyweight eliminator. I don't know much about them. But then we have Katsuma Akitsugi versus Jonas Sultan, former title challenger, and Carlos Balderos versus Jesse Guerrero on that card. That will be on ProBox TV on YouTube, and that is a banger of a card. So let's say, you want to just watch some boxing on YouTube, want to see a good card. I personally could be biased. I think they do the best telecasts currently.
Look, am I wrong in saying that there's been a decrease in the number of their broadcasts?
It certainly feels that way. Yeah.
Because I don't think they have another one lined up after this either.
No, but I mean, we'll see. But I mean, you also look and, not a lot of people are running shows.
I'm asking as a fan because I enjoy what they do.
We're looking and we're saying, okay, this month, July, we go, okay, it's a good month. We look at August. What's the schedule? There's not much of a schedule. We're hearing about November already. Oh, these big fights. We're like, well, that's, we got September for Connect, but it just feels like currently there's just not a lot out there.
Not giving us much to work with there, bub.
Not giving us much to work with. Dakota, what are you going to be doing this week? Are you going to be at any of the fight festivities? Are you going to be going out, checking out the city? Are you doing anything? Where can people find you? All that stuff.
I will definitely be at the at least some of the media events for the fight at the Garden. Ironically enough, my stagehand union is working the fight, so I will be there in that capacity. So if you see me in a hard hat, feel free to say what's up. Also, we'll be putting out the episode of The Fight Life on ITR Boxing with Price Taylor at some point this week. Really looking forward to showing you guys that. And always a pleasure with you, my friend. And thanks to everybody in the chat.
Okay, we will be back next week.